Good morning. Okay, it's Fall Fest, so when I say good morning, you say good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Perfect. It's Fall Fest, so what could be better? I'm Andy Schmidt-Andrus, the director here at Kaufman Museum, and today we have the privilege of hearing a performance on a truly unique instrument. And I don't say unique flippantly. This is the only organ made by the organ builder Teschemacher that's in the United States. In recent years, we have lost two outstanding supporters of the Teschemacher Deknadel Vandersmissen organ, and I'm thinking you might hear more from Rosie about how it got that long, strung-out name. And in 1986, Shirley Sprunger King, who at the time taught organ at Bethel College, contacted the Nowak Organ Company for a proposal to restore the Teschemacher organ. 20 years later, after the funds were raised, Fritz Nowak began the restoration, and the refurbished instrument was reinstalled at Kaufman Museum. And our staff member David Kreider, who's here today, was intimately involved in that process, taking apart and packing the organ. And then when it came back from the East Coast, where Nowak's firm was located, putting it back together with Fritz Nowak. So if you have questions about the actual structure of the organ, Dave's the one you should talk to. So we had those two supporters of the Teschemacher organ. We're very thrilled to have had their support throughout that restoration process. Shirley passed away this past August 2024, and Fritz Nowak died in June of 2021. Both cared deeply for this unique centuries-old instrument. Today, Roseann Penner Kaufman, who studied organ at Bethel College under Shirley King, will present a series of songs representing the homes that housed the organ on the journey to this spot in Kaufman Museum in central Kansas. You can read more about Rosie's accomplishments in the program. For now, I'd like us to just keep moving so we can actually get to hear the organ. So please help me welcome Roseann Penner Kaufman as she presents organ music at home, wherever that may be.
Thank you, Andy. I can hardly express what a thrill it is for me to get to play this instrument. I mean, you go to a museum and you see an artifact, but this is more than an artifact. This is a musical instrument that after 250 years is still producing and still playing. And when I start to pump the bellows, you actually hear the organ take its breath and breathe. It's almost like a living artifact for us. And for it to be part of the new exhibit in the museum, I'm just thrilled to get an opportunity to be part of this. We frequently, well, with some regularity, do some recitals here at the museum on this instrument. And often we have chosen to do hymn-based music. A friend of mine recently asked, how do you choose what to play on this instrument? I mean, after all, it's relatively small. It's only got 4 octaves of keys. It has no pedals and relatively limited sounds. How do you choose what to play? Well, in the Deknadel home, we're assuming the Deknadels were a fairly pietistic family. There were a lot of hymns that were played on the instrument. But today I'm taking a little different tact. I love historical novels. Novels where there's some basis in fact, but there's plenty of fiction, and I would prefer to say imagination added to it. And so that's what I am hoping to do today, to let you use your imagination. The organ moved, and I'll let you count how many times you hear about the organ moving. It's in the pamphlet as well there. I would like to play some pieces that were from the places where the organ moved to at about the time the organ moved, by composers who would have been composing at that time. I gave myself a bit of a challenge in finding those things, but see how you can determine how well I did. The organ was built in 1750. About 1750. For the Mennonite pastor Johannes Decknadel, who lived in Amsterdam. So the first piece I'm playing is by Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, and it's from a collection of sheet music that we now call the Anna Magdalena Bach Notebook, which is a collection of North German music. CPE was Johann Sebastian Bach's son, and he would have been composing around 1750. So what I'm playing is a little student piece that I'm sure many of you will recognize because it's one of the first pieces that many of us are exposed to in learning early classical music. And I would like to think of the Decknadel girls learning to play this piece on their new little pipe organ. Sweet little piece. The next piece, again, using your imagination, from Amsterdam, the organ went to Hamburg in 1796 when Decknadel's daughter, Hildegonde, married Gijsbert van der Smissen, who is also a pastor. Hamburg is where George Frederick Handel wrote his early operas. So I am playing a transcription of an opera orchestra, opera overture. The transcription was done in 1750. So think about this. Already in 1750, keyboard players were wanting to play orchestral transcriptions, right? So I don't know if the pietistic van der Smissens ever went to the opera. Who knows? But isn't it fun to think about Hildegonde playing something like this? Just a piece that actually some of us still play for weddings and for preludes and such, just because it's kind of a fun little piece. And this one has a lot of notes, so this is one where I have to pump a lot. went with Hillegonda's son, Jakob. He was also a preacher, and they went to Friedrichstadt. So in Danzig, the piece that I'm going to play, it was tough to find a 19th century piece from Danzig that would have worked on this instrument. So this is actually a much earlier piece, written early in the 17th century, but it's from a collection that we now know as the Danzig manuscript. And I chose this piece mostly because it made me laugh, because of the little Latin inscriptions that are written in the margins of the manuscript. Little epigrams, little phrases that just seem so random. And on this piece, the little phrases, the first one says, "Add little to little and you will accumulate a great amount." And the second one is, and I'll try it in Latin, "Homo nil nisi bulla levis," which I saw translated as, "Man is nothing but a light bubble." And then the German version, it was, "Man is nothing but a soap bubble." So I don't know how that relates to the music that you'll hear, but that's what we get. And after that, the next piece that you'll hear, the organ then went from Danzig back to Friedrichstadt in 1837 with Jakob's son Karl, who was also a preacher. The next piece after that is a little romantic piece written by Clara Schumann in 1847. So she was a pianist and a composer in her own right. This piece was probably written for piano, but in 1847, it's a little difficult to know. Would have been a piano, a clavichord, a harpsichord, or an organ. So many pieces could transfer back and forth between any of those instruments. And after all, this is the instrument that the Vandersmissens had in their house. So this is what she would have played this sort of piece on. So first from Danzig, and then from Hamburg. You heard there at the end, perhaps, what happens when I don't pump quite enough. Yeah, and the wind fades a bit, but. So the next move that the organ makes is a big one, because it goes to Wadsworth, Ohio, with Carl Eustace van der Smissen when he was appointed as one of the leaders of the Mennonite school in Wadsworth, Ohio. So it would have gone by boat, by train, and probably by wagon for the last bit of the move, right? The organ all comes apart. All the pipes come out, the case comes apart. When Dave took it to Massachusetts, he took it in a van. We boxed the whole thing up, and so you can see that it came apart quite easily. By my count, it's moved at least 18 times. So imagine if you move something 18 times, that there are things that happen along the way. So in 1879, the organ went from Wadsworth to Hayesville, Ohio. Now, it wasn't easy to find music from Ohio from the 1870s that would work here. But I was surprised to discover that the hymn Nu nist sie erschienen was written by a German Lutheran immigrant in Wisconsin. I figured Wisconsin was close enough to Ohio. So I can imagine the family standing around the organ in their parlor at Christmas time, singing Nu nist sie erschienen. So that's what I'm going to ask that we all do today. I will play it the whole thing through once on the possibility that there might be some folks who don't know it. And we'll sing it through first in German and then in English. Okay? Can't you just imagine the van der Smissens standing around and doing that at Christmas? That's great. So the next one is a real stretch. In 1890, the organ went to Summerfield, Illinois, with Carl's son, Carl Heinrich, who was also a pastor. And then it went to Fort Wayne, Indiana, with Carl's sister, Wilhelmina. And Wilhelmina then took the organ to Hillsboro in 1900 while she worked in Gossel. So what popular music from the 19th century would represent the Midwest? We got Stephen Foster. All right. So this is a happy little tune, and I am so glad that my friend Lois Harder has agreed to sing this. This is the sort of thing that I imagine the sisters might have done on a Sunday afternoon in the parlor. So thank you, Lois.
Some folks like to sigh, some folks do, some folks do. Some folks long to die, but that's not me nor you. Long live the merry, merry heart that laughs by night and day, like the queen of mirth, no matter what some folks say.
Time out.
No matter what some folks say. No matter what some folks say, that's right. Rosie's getting a workout of it.
Didn't even lose my wind.
Oh, look at that. First Some folks fear to smile, some folks do, some folks do. Others laugh through guile, but that's not me nor you. Long live the merry, merry heart that laughs by night and day, like the queen of mirth, no matter what some folks say. Some folks fret and scold, some folks do, some folks do. They'll soon be dead and cold, but that's not me nor you. Some folks braid gray hairs, some folks do, some folks do. Brooding o'er their cares, but that's not me nor you. Long live the merry, merry heart that laughs by night and day, like the queen of mirth, no matter what some folks say. Some folks toil and save, some folks do, some folks do, to buy themselves a grave, but that's not me nor you. Long live the merry, merry heart that laughs by night and day, like the queen of mirth, no matter what some folks say. Like the queen of mirth, no matter what some folks say.
So have you kept track of the moves? So the next one, number 10, is what it brought the organ home to Bethel. In 1910, Hillegonda and Karl Heinrich donated the organ to Bethel. They would be the great-great-grandchildren of Johannes Stecknadel, always in a Mennonite family, mostly a Mennonite family of preachers. And for this final piece of music, it's the Bethel Alma Mater. And it was written in, I think, 1916 by Albert Schmutz. Unfortunate last name, but actually, he was a very highly respected, for his time, composer. He went from Bethel to Emporia State University, and he was the head of the music department there for many years. And he was also one of the founders of the Interlochen Arts Academy, if you've heard of that. So he was born in Hallstead, and I believe that at the time that he was here at Bethel, at least for the first 8 or 10 years, this would have been the only organ on campus. And I like to think that Albert Schmutz, in the chapel perhaps, that this was the organ that he played on. So isn't that a wonderful legacy to have this instrument that has been here for now over 100 years and has been used for much of the time? I think that the fact that we have this instrument and have cared for it and it has now been restored and is a vital part of this museum is just such an amazing credit to the college, to the museum, and to the people that have donated and cared for this instrument. And I hope that we can keep it vital and playing for the next 150, 300 years, however long. The organ will probably outlive me, certainly. So to sing the alma mater, you notice that there are 3 stanzas. We don't ever get to sing those other stanzas. So we're going to sing all 3. All right. Do you want to stand to sing it?
Right?
You can be seated. Well, thank you so much, Rosie. And are you willing in just a moment to take questions and answers? Okay, great. But Rosie had just a wonderful segue for me when she talked about restoring the organ and hoping that it's still here 150 or 300 years to come. We have a organ fund, and in 2007, the restoration was paid for through that organ fund. And it that same fund provides ongoing preservation and conservation of this historic instrument. And the contributions to the organ fund ensure that the organ can continue to be used in recitals just like this. And we hope to make this an annual tradition at Fall Fest. And we do play it a few other times of the year. So there is a donation jar just near the door in the back that says Organ Fund, if you'd like to contribute to the Organ Fund. And I know there are some of you that just want to donate right now. So I have a couple baskets. We'll send a basket up each side of the auditorium. And then also, if you would like to contribute online, you just go to the Bethel College homepage, look for the donate button, And as you progress through the process, be sure to write organ fund in the memo line. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Rosie for questions and answers. And I think what we'll do, this is actually the traveling mic, but so Rosie can answer. We will just repeat the questions as you say them. So Rosie, if you could repeat the questions.
And I realize this is Fall Fest, and folks may have tickets for other events and need to. So if you feel like you need to go to your next thing, please don't let me hold you here. Okay. All right. Yeah. Does this come out? That's a great question. The question is this a mass-produced instrument, or is this done by a craftsman? There are actually, I believe, 11 other Teschemacher organs that we have pieces or parts of, sometimes just parts, in Europe. They're in different places. There is a sister instrument to this that is very much like it, which was near the hometown of Fritz Nowak, who restored it, which was part of the story of how this all happened, is that this brought him back to his home. But it is very much a craftsman-produced instrument. Everyone is different. And if you look at the workmanship of it, you can see there are some places where you can actually see the chisel marks. And one story that I'll tell is these decorative pipe shades at the top. The picture from Indiana shows those pipe shades, but somewhere between Indiana and Kansas they got lost. But we had that picture, and so the Nowak company actually recreated those pipe shades and gold-leafed them. I mean, that's the kind of craftsmanship that the Nowak company provided when they restored this instrument. You'll see some spots here where there's a corner. Some corners are a different color wood. There's a tiny little piece right there. That was a corner that was chipped away in the moving, damaged, but the Nowak company repaired it, but used a different color wood, so it's obvious that that's part of the restoration. And the same way with this panel on this side. This panel was broken at some point, but they replaced the panel with the same kind of design, and then but made it a different color, so it's obvious. So yeah, every pipe is a different size and a different diameter, so every pipe had to be rolled and voiced separately. So there's a lot of handwork. And one of the ways that we knew this was a Teschemacher, because it's not signed anywhere, is this center pipe has a particular, if you come and look closely, it has a particular curvature to it that was Teschemacher's signature of the way he did that front pipe. No other organs have that specific thing. So that's how we knew it was a Teschemacher with those other things. I could go on all day. Other questions?
The stars on top seem to tell us how much air is in the bellow.
Good.
Do you pay attention to that while you're playing?
Did you hear the question? The stars on the top, it seemed to indicate how much wind is in the bellows. Actually, I don't usually look up there, but there is a little tiny, there's a weight that it's behind this fourth pipe here. And when I'm playing, I watch the height of that weight. It's on a string, and that's the counterbalance for the bellows. And so that's what I watch. So that at the end of that one piece where the organ ran out of wind, the weight was way at the top. And so, yeah. There was a story that those stars had a different function at one point, but this is what they're for. They're wind indicators. Yeah.
Without being a fellow music nerd here, 1750 was also the year Johann Sebastian Bach died. So the CPE's dates are off. Johann was born in 1685.
Oh.
I don't think CPE was born before.
No, he wasn't. Sorry, what?
But more importantly, it's just to think that this goes back to Bach's final year. It's really
Right. Others? Yeah. Yeah.
So, this came into a home of an established preacher. I'm thinking about income inequality. How big of an investment for that household was this?
That's a great question. And one of the things that I appreciate about this instrument is that I think it's a different path of the Mennonite story than the one that we often hear, is that this is part of the urban Mennonite story. And I think that Johannes Decknadel, his job was as an importer or a trade, he did something in Amsterdam. Do you know that story? That he had another occupation besides just being a pastor. But I would imagine to have a house that would accommodate this kind of an instrument, because you would probably have gatherings. There weren't instruments in the churches. In the single kirk, there wasn't an instrument until about 1880, I don't think, to the late 19th century. So this would have been a home instrument. They might not have had them in the churches, but they would have gathered in homes and probably sung around the... So yeah, I imagine that this was pretty significant. And he bought two. I don't know if the other one was a Teschemacher, but he bought one for each of his daughters when they married.
So it was a big part of their family.
Yeah, it's a big part of the family tradition. Yeah.
I know that organs in Mennonite homes, it was often the case rather than a piano. Because there was one in my paternal grandfather's home.
Right?
Okay? There was no piano. There wasn't something else about organs. Although not a
Right. Yeah, they would have been reed organs, pump organs, yeah. Yeah, pianos weren't as available. Yeah. Okay, Don has a question. Yeah. Well, and you probably know the story better than I do. Yes, this organ was in storage for a long, as I understand, in the attic of the science hall for many years. And in the 1960s, Esko Lowen brought it out, and Esko and some students started the restoration project. When Shirley came here in the late 1970s, the organ was in pretty tough shape, and it had a blower that was hooked to a vacuum cleaner. That the vacuum cleaner blower is what gave it wind. Yeah, easier than pumping. But even in that condition, it was used. And Don and Shirley played, and the Decknadel Trio did concerts. Even in that condition, it was still usable as an instrument, which I think is remarkable. But Shirley led the move to have it restored. And in 1986, she spoke with Fritz Nowak about the restoration, and he gave a bid. And there wasn't enough to do the restoration at that point. 20 years later, when we approached him again, he honored his bid from 20 years earlier. So he had a big investment in making this happen. This was his first project after he retired from running his organ building shop. And so I think this was his first retirement project. So he gave a lot of himself to that. And it was Shirley that had first made that contact with Fritz Nowak and worked through that first contract with what needed to be done and what would happen. And the fact that the museum built a room specific for that, I think Shirley had a big part in seeing that happened as well. So.
I do have another question. It seems like the pump is way off to the side and you have to sit in an awkward position while you're playing. Was it originally meant for somebody else to do the pumping?
There actually is another pump handle in the back. So someone else could pump, but I like pumping. Because the wind, you can change how it sounds by how you pump. So, you can affect the wind by how you pump, and so I think that's part of the challenge and part of the skill and part of the I just like to do it that way. Okay. You know, you can come talk to me.
I'm sure Rosie will take questions afterwards. And first off, appreciation to Rosie once again. And to Lois. And we do appreciate all the research you had to do and the investigation to figure out which songs you wanted to play. So we appreciate that very much.